Hello, trumpet players. In this video, we're going to have a discussion about adult beginners. So this is a request that we got. Someone said, and it's been months now. So I haven't been doing much YouTube stuff lately. I kind of took a break. We did this thing where we're doing 40 days of videos, and we did that, and then I needed a break after that. So before we had that 40 days of videos at the beginning of the year, we got a request to talk about adult beginners, the special, what makes them different, and they are actually different, really. The biggest difference is they don't have as much time to practice as the children do. And that can be challenging. I don't mean, what I don't want to say is that's going to be a problem. That's not necessarily a problem. As a teacher, I don't have a problem with my students not practicing. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but I don't have a problem with that. Because how can I teach the wholesome musical priorities and then be upset when my students don't practice? So, and I had to reconcile that in my mind. And I had to come to a place where, as a teacher, I say, you know what? If they're living what I teach, they're not going to have enough time to practice. What are we going to do about that? And that's part of why I teach this accumulative, it's called the art of accumulative practicing, which contrasts traditional practicing. In traditional practice, you have to practice a certain amount, or else, right? You have to practice that much, or else your music is going to suffer. And if your music is going to suffer, you shall suffer, right? I don't teach that. After all these years, now I started teaching adult beginners about 30 years ago. And so yes, that is the first thing. They've got responsibilities that have to come first. That's the first thing. And I applaud the trumpet students who might be watching this, who are giving it a serious effort, while at the same time honoring all of their responsibilities outside of the trumpet. I applaud each one of you. Because it's not a problem. You guys that are already doing this, you know what I mean by this. It's not a problem. It's not going to prevent you from succeeding. But it is something that we have to work on. Because if you just try to practice, try to get progress, it's not going to work. You have to actually, because of the limited time, you have to practice smart. You have to make sure that everything you do on the horn, when you do have that time, you have to make sure that time counts. Okay? So that's the first thing, is the time that you've got. You don't have the luxury of time, unless you're retired, and then I do have some students who are retired, and they have, 3-4 hours a day to practice. I've got some students like that. I don't teach them any differently, really, because the stuff that I teach that helps you with limited time also helps you when you have a lot of time and you can't cram all of the extras in. It's the same thing. In fact, the philosophy that I have that helps you when you have little time, I figured that philosophy out when I had hours and hours and hours to practice every day. Because even when you have 8 hours to practice a day, you are not going to have enough time to practice. There's a saying that I saw in one of the Aebersold books, the catalog. It said, if you've got enough time to practice, you're doing it wrong. So I love that. Okay, so that the thing about the retired people brings up another issue. A lot of times the adult beginners feel like they don't have enough time to do this. They start to practice in a panic instead of being, it's like you want to be. Let's say you're 70 years old. I'm just picking that off the top of my head. I'm not thinking about any particular students right now. I've had plenty of 70-year-old students. Let's say you're 70 years old and you're just now beginning trumpet. And you have in your head an idea of what you would like to sound like. And you think that maybe you just don't have enough time to get there. So there's that sense of panic. And I've seen it happen with all the adults. Don't think I'm just talking about 70-year-olds. I'm talking about all the adults, especially the beginners. They have an idea that they just don't have enough time left in their lives to do anything meaningful with this music. Now, I think that's cross-wired thinking. I hate to sound cliche. You guys know that if you've been watching my channel, you know I'm not a very cliche person. But here it comes. It's the journey, not the destination, okay? If you want to get pleasure out of playing the instrument, because you know what? How good you want to be is like that proverbial carrot out in front of the donkey. How good you want to be is always going to grow as you grow as a player. So when you get better, how much better you want to be gets farther ahead of you. That's human nature. So it really can't. I tell that to my high school students, right? Because if your sense of satisfaction in playing music is rooted in how good you are, you're never going to be happy. It doesn't work like that. If I personally, where I am in my career right now, if I had to base my satisfaction, my musical satisfaction on how good I was, I would be absolutely miserable right now. Let that sink in. We don't get to a point where we're satisfied with our playing. And in fact, I've told students in the past, if you ever get to where you're satisfied with your playing, just quit then, because that's when you stop growing. So it really does need to be about, when we're talking about satisfaction, it really does need to be about the journey. It needs to be about that path between where you are now and where you'll be next year. And I would say that's number 3, right? This perception. So the number 2 is that the panic feeling of thinking that you're running out of time. Number 3 is this perception that pleasure has to come from how good you are on the instrument. Well, let me tell you. A lot of times the students come in and say, oh, I hope that was good enough for you. No, it wasn't actually good enough for me. It probably never will be. I hold myself to a high standard. I'll hold you to a high standard too. You're never going to impress me. As my student, you're not going to impress me. Not with your playing, I guess, is what I'm saying. I'm impressed by other stuff. I'm impressed with someone who sticks to the schedule. I'm impressed with someone who, when they do have to take time off properly. That's what impresses me. But you're not going to impress me with your playing, right? I've been listening to great trumpet players for 50 years now. The best of the best of the best. I listen to them regularly still today. How are you going to impress me now? Right? So, and you should be listening to those guys all the time too. You should be listening to the best of the best of the best. And if you are listening to the best of the best of the best, how do you ever hope to be satisfied with your playing? So, like I said, it really needs to be about what you're doing right now with the music. And this gets back to what I've said in other videos about the human connection. Join a band, go to the jam sessions. Or put a group together. Get someone to come over to your house and play duets with you. Have activities like that you have set up so that you can enjoy what you're doing now. Don't make yourself have to wait. Don't say, oh, I'll enjoy it when I sound as good as this or as good as that. Then you're setting yourself up to never have satisfaction. The satisfaction we have, it's sort of like marriage, right? It's sort of like marriage. You know, you marry the person, at first you're infatuated, but then you start learning all the nitty-gritty details about that person that you actually don't like, right? And that person's flawed, you are flawed, but there is absolutely no reason why the two of you can't enjoy each other, enjoy your company, all that stuff, right? We don't focus on our flaws. If you only ever focus in your flaws in the marriage, I got that mixed up. If you only ever focus on your flaws in the marriage, you will have a miserable marriage. And it's the same thing with the trumpet stuff. If you only focus on how bad you are, then you won't have a satisfying trumpet career. Now here's where some of the stuff gets kind of, kind of not nice. Sometimes the reason people play the instrument is because they want to impress people. And like I told you, you'll never impress me. And if you're trying to impress great trumpet players, it's not going to happen. Maybe you'll impress a friend. But I think trying to impress people is probably the worst reason to play trumpet. What normally happens, here's what normally happens as the adults, right? The adults will be listening to music. This is another one of those things that makes the adults, so let's make this number, I think, what is this, 5 now or 4, something like that. One of those things that makes the adults different is those younger students, especially the beginner types, right? The ones who are anywhere from 1st grade to 5th grade. Those students haven't spent a lifetime listening to trumpet music. And the adults have. That makes it a little bit more challenging because an adult normally says, hey, I want to play trumpet. Normally says that because they've heard some trumpet often enough to say, hey, I really like that. I want to do that. That's typically the reason why an adult will take lessons. It's because they've already heard it and they want a piece of that. And that's a good thing. I wish all of the younger students were required to listen before they picked an instrument. I actually believe that's what it should be. The students, the young ones should listen to music first before they decide that they're going to be musicians at all. But yes, so the adults go into it already knowing what they want to sound like. And there's a lot of pressure there that they create for themselves. There's a lot of pressure there because they know what it's supposed to sound like. And they know that what's coming out of their bill is awful. Right? They know that what's coming out of their bill is nowhere near the standard of what they've been listening to on the radio or on MP3s or whatever. They know it. And that's why it's so important not to make that the source of your pleasure. The source of your... I don't like the word pleasure. The source of your musical satisfaction. It's better not to use that as your standard that you apply to yourself in terms of satisfaction. That's a great standard to apply to yourself in terms of the business of practicing. The standard that you hold yourself to in terms of quality, you say to yourself, I am not going to move on until it sounds like it's that good. Of course you want that. But I'm talking about satisfaction. When you say, oh yes, what makes trumpet playing worth it for me is this level of satisfaction. Because, let's be honest, most people, if they're not getting any satisfaction out of it, they're going to quit. So that's really what we're talking about. How do you maintain that satisfaction? Well, I'm telling you that if you want to be satisfied with your trumpet playing as an adult who started trumpet because you love the way the trumpet sounds and you've heard all these wonderful recordings and you want to be part of that, then you need to switch gears and stop thinking that you're not going to be happy until you sound that good. And it's not that I'm not suggesting that you can't get there. I'm telling you that if you hold yourself to that standard in terms of satisfaction, you won't get there. You will quit before that, before you ever get anywhere near that. I think 70-year-olds have plenty of time to become a great player. I think 80-year-olds have plenty of time. Of course, one of the things that I've been asked is that kind of question. Let's end with this, because there are some issues that I've dealt with certain students. Because some people will ask me all the time, am I too old to play the trumpet? What is the oldest that you can be and still play the trumpet? Now, that's not necessarily for beginners. People are asking me that all the time. When do I get too old? And I don't think that's how it works. There's not a magical age where you can stop now. It has to do with your health, right? For example, if you have problems with breathing, and you can't take more than a shallow breath, you might struggle playing the trumpet. And if you and a lot of this stuff is, by the way, caused by medications, right? And you can't not take the medications. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you to to choose between medications and playing the trumpet. That's, if you think that's what I'm saying, go watch my wholesome musical priorities video, okay? But the fact of the matter is, sometimes you take a medication and it will make you weak, for example, so that you can barely even hold up the instrument, right? If you can't even hold the horn up, how are you going to play the trumpet? So there are those kind of issues. So when we say, what's the oldest that a trumpet player can play? There's no oldest. There's no such thing as a time when you're too old to play. What happens is when your health deteriorates so that you can't do these things anymore. That's the problem. And that happens at a different rate for everybody. Okay? So you have to find out for yourself. Can you hold the instrument up? Can you take big enough breaths? Can you hold the embouchure steady? That's another problem I've seen with the adult students. You can develop some kind of a quiver. Now, if the quiver sounds like vibrato, then I say keep playing. Right? Hey, this dude has a crazy vibrato. Well, so what? That's your vibrato now. Maybe you don't like that vibrato, but you're still playing the horn. Right? Maybe you don't like it, but you're still playing the horn. Keep doing it. But you see what I'm saying about the health issues? Health issues, and that's not necessarily a thing specifically for old people, right? Health issues can prevent anybody from playing the trumpet. It's just that when people get older, the health issues start to accumulate, you know? So anyway, that's my take on adult beginners. Adult beginners, let me tell you this, I actually prefer working with adult beginners because they can communicate. When I'm working with an adult beginner and I say this, this, and that, and they can give me a intelligent, an intelligent response. It's the adult beginners that help me with my beginner method. Because I get feedback from the adults that I never get from the youngsters. Because they're not, whether it's educated or whatever it is, I don't get the same feedback from the youngsters. So I genuinely enjoy working with the older students. Okay? Even the beginners, especially the beginners. I thoroughly enjoy that. Okay? Anyway, so that's my take. If you have any questions about this, please ask below. And if you are a teacher and you have your own experiences with adults that you'd like to share below, please feel free to do that. Other than that, God bless you, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.